So we're all sorted. Thank you very much. So my name is Katarina Coppé. I am the Global Commercial Officer at Waliba, international company, and I'm presented here by Anne.
Yes. I'm Anne Selis, Talent Strategy Lead from Belgium and Luxembourg for Accenture. And my colleagues would describe my role as the DNA guardian of Accenture, which is, I think, a nice description because it shows that I'm working a lot in our offices to make sure that people live our values day by day. And maybe for those who don't know Accenture yet, I'll also shortly introduce that. We are a global services company where we try to support our clients with combining technology and human ingenuity, which is expensive language for consulting. Don't tell my boss I said that, but that's what we do. And I'm part of the HR department, so not the consulting part, which I was before, though. Do you want to? Oh, okay, go. So we grew actually quite a lot. I'm now about 6.5, 7 years almost at Accenture. And when I started there, we were with about 500,000 colleagues globally, so quite a large organization. Now we are with 750,000. Locally in Belgium, we grew from about 1,000 until 1,500 as well. So it's also quite an increase in colleagues and employees. And in the past 2 years, we did 3 main acquisitions. So we had AFD Tech, not to be confused with FD Tech, where we had a presentation earlier. And we have Sentia and Greenfish. So those 3 were acquired in the past 2 years, so quite recently. We had many more as well, of course, to come to these numbers. But what we noticed is we buy these companies because we want their knowledge. These are all people. We do not buy products. So we want their knowledge. But we also noticed that there are quite some cultural differences coming from a very small company, integrated in a huge thing like Accenture, with a lot of new processes and tools to learn. Many things that you can't really know where to find it because you need to know the right people or the right tools or the right links. And I can tell you it's a mess if you need to find it from the start. And I see some people nodding like you've experienced this before. Which in the end led to a high turnover. And that's exactly what we don't want when we acquire people for their knowledge, because then you're losing the knowledge and it's, in essence, a huge cost, this acquisition. So it was about a year ago that we met for the first time, and as I'm also responsible for engagement and making sure that people feel well integrated in our organization, not only for new colleagues but also coming from an acquisition. We were looking for a new partner to support us in this, and that's when I met Waliba. A part of it is, you can see here, our listening framework. Listening framework, also an expensive name for all the surveys we do. A lot of them, actually. So you see that there are quite some coming from global. We need to do them. It's pushed from them. No questions asked. Then you have on country level some surveys that we do, and then in team and projects. It's a lot. And as you can see, survey fatigue is something real. Getting up to an 80 or 90% rate like we had at DHL, it's impossible with this type of this number of surveys. So, as you can imagine, as an acquired colleague, even worse, because you come into an organization and you suddenly have all these surveys, you're bombarded with this, you have a new organization, new culture, you need to still do your work because that didn't stop in the meantime. And then you have all these surveys, so they're a bit lost. When we look at it, these new employees, they start already with these 2 types of surveys in the beginning. It's their venture and acquisitions pulse surveys. It is 3 times during the acquisition period. And then as well when they join, so when the acquisition is real, then we have a 3, 6, and 12-month new joiner survey. When do they get the feedback, you think, of this survey? Never, yeah? Yeah, most likely, or they don't read it. So never, or in 3 or 6 months when you've had your new survey already, so a bit late in time. So also the actions that we drew upon them, or like all the outcomes, we didn't really use them. And we even noticed at one of the acquisitions a year ago that the response rate for the HR, VNA employee pulse there was 3%. Because it comes from a global Accenture account. They don't know Accenture yet that well. they don't have a connection. Why would they fill this in? They have their work, they have their greenfish survey still up and running. So why would they do this? There is no incentive to this for them, and especially not if you don't get any results. So then it was WCBLeaders to the rescue, actually. But really, because with WCBLeaders, we implemented a tool which is, I think in the beginning it takes you like 12 minutes or something to fill in, or 11, I might be wrong. But you fill in with some details, and then you have immediately your own personal dashboard. You do it on the app or online. And we have the luck, of course, that we have a lot or almost all of our colleagues are desk workers, so it's also a bit easier for us to implement it like this. But with a few clicks, actually, and then a weekly update, a weekly pulse, you can get an immediate result for yourself. So you see your own WCBLeaders index, your personal one. You see your own actions you can take to be more engaged or to feel better as well. You have your daily mission, then, so you can also keep track and keep a diary of your own well-being. And so the journaling, yeah, I know it's hip and trendy, so journaling, that's what you can do as well. And then you have also suggestions from resources that we offer within Accenture, which is, especially coming from an acquisition, very interesting. Because if you get here that you're not engaged or you have issues with certain processes and tools, we can guide you immediately to the right link. Or we say, your stress levels are a bit high at the moment. We could guide you through Calm, which is an app that helps you and supports you in finding a more healthy mental well-being as well. Then you have immediate access to these resources. And that's an interesting one because it's immediate feedback for people responding it. So now we have the buy-in, and that's very interesting for our employees. Then when we look at for our managers, because it's not only from a manager perspective, from an employee perspective, our managers also have access to the dashboard. So every team manager has it. And I think we have a lot of HR professionals here in the room. How often have you been the blocking point when you are managing surveys or when you are managing some sort of data analytics? I think quite often, now it's not happening anymore. You have a global view. You can see as a manager or HR partner or any HR role that has access, you can see a certain subset of the data, and all your team managers in the business can see the same. So that's very interesting because you're no longer the blocking point in this process. Besides that, you as a manager, as a team manager, also get insights on your team. What are specific actions you can take to increase these points for your team? So you immediately have actions and you don't need to set up focus groups, which are also very time consuming. And I have to say, we also have sort of, with the survey fatigue, also a focus group fatigue at our site. So all of this is very interesting for managers as well, and they also can increase their own experience. But what does the WCBLeaders model do? That'll leave to Katarina.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, as unexplained, there's two sides of the coin here. So on the individual side, people get something back. It could be one-off or ongoing. We can choose if someone does an engagement survey once a year, or sometimes I heard every 10 years, please. You can actually choose whether it's baseline, you want to know it once, or you want to give ongoing access, that's an option. So basically, you get personalized insights, but also, so what next, right? What can you do to improve your own situation, take control of your own destiny? On the other side, managers get personalized recommendation, as Anne said, in what you can do yourself. And it also gives you points for areas of focus, risks, but people management resources. So if you have your company catalog of things that are all like there, but nobody knows, I've also been an L&D global manager, so I was very passionate, about all of this because I saw that this is something, we might do a lot of initiatives and programs, but once the launch is done, people forget about it. So if we can then map those beautiful resources to personal dimensions, then hopefully people can see all of those resources ongoing without us having to trigger anything. So, this is basically human-centered technology, but with behavioral science combined, okay? And now, why is behavioral science so important and very close to my heart? I come from a background in human capital consulting, and we predicted behavior at work for selection, development, and promotions. That was my career the whole time. So the science of making sure that there's no risk being made when people are appointed into roles, so that they're happy, that they're aligned to what the context and the culture wants, is something really important. It doesn't really happen in listening typically. So what happens in listening is people focus on what is happening in the culture and what is happening in the context. Okay, so but you might be a person sitting in exactly the same office, sitting with the exact same boss, having the same package. But it's boosting for you, but blocking for you. Like, it really depends on who we are. So we bring the personal lens into the mix, and we say that employee experience is something holistic. That was one of the issues. Employee experience, again, is like a container concept. Everyone has their own, understanding of what employee experience means. We came with a psychometric model, a predictive model that says this is the result of who you are and the environment you work in. And that is a dynamic interaction. So who I am, how resilient I am, how connected I feel in the company, the purpose I have or not, that's all who I am. And that interacts with my company, right? So it's that dynamic interaction. So we have been traditionally focused in the talent selection and development space on understanding people. And we've traditionally focused employee listening, engagement, well-being surveys, DE&I service, change and transformation on the context side. But there's actually no technology right now that brings the two together, and that's what we're trying to do, leading into an employee experience index, which is a bit like an IQ score. Could be 70 all the way to 130. The higher you go, the more thriving you are, because you're aligned to what your company or your environment wants of you. So you can get that index at individual level, employee experience at individual level, company level, or manager level, like team level. So why is that model important or relevant? For me, the science brings us to predictions. And for me, again, a really key thing for me is what we're trying to solve is we don't want to look at the past. Typically, when you do an engagement survey, you close it, and it's data of the past. You're fixing, course-correcting things that may not be a problem anymore. You may be doing things that have expanded in size, and it's too late, and you should have better focused on something else. So predicting is a really good benefit when you start with science. So basically, so going into one level deeper, of course, you want to dive into understanding what is basically, so how do we measure this? We can do it once off with a very short snapshot, we call it. It's like 10 minutes max. But with that one-off holistic measure, we can predict psychosocial risks, we can predict trust, we can predict retentions, we can all of these great outcomes, but we don't ask all of the questions to everyone if it doesn't matter to them. So for example, if you can see here, how do the factors below currently impact your experience at work? If a flexible work arrangement is not boosting or blocking me, I'm in the middle, I'm not going to ask more questions about it, right? But if I'm seeing a boosting aspect, why is this boosting? Or if I see something blocking, why is this blocking? So the dynamic nature of the survey means it's not like boring for everyone, but it really gives us granular information and understands the true boosters and blockers based on the individual perspective, the way they are, the way they actually sit in that environment. So the idea is that we capture it one-off, but then we can have ongoing micro-conversations if people want to really continuously understand themselves. Now, why is this so important? We underestimate self-awareness. We overestimate self-awareness, but the link to business outcome is underestimated. So if people are very self-aware, they can take control of what they can do to improve their situation and not wait for HR or the manager to fix the situation. Of course, it's a co-ownership, but we know only 1 in 10 leaders has true self-awareness. What about frontline workers? What about other people who don't have these great leadership programs or these 360-degree feedback and coaching one-on-one? Typically, all these other people don't have all those luxury type of self-awareness programs, right? So if we can do that at scale, give people self-awareness, we're actually making it much easier to get people to do something differently that was the past. So everyone in this room might have different outcomes they're looking for, right? And we will talk about the outcomes that Accenture was looking for, but these are some of the examples of the outcomes that we can predict based on the model. So as you can see, flight risk, net promoter score, growth, absenteeism, trust, career, psychological safety. We looked at how are the top quartile scorers on our model compared to the top versus the bottom scorers, okay? How do they differ? Like, what can we do and predict if people, and if we see it, why and what is causing it? So as a quick example, people don't leave a company just for a manager. they might, and if I take one back, they might not have the purpose anymore. They're just at a different stage of their career. They're just lacking purpose. They feel they can't grow anymore. Of course, a manager could be the issue, but it's always a combination. So we know from the science what are the drivers of flight risk. So if we know what people believe in or what their perceptions are, we can actually predict with strong accuracy all of these outcomes. That means we're not looking at the past, but we can take actions and give managers immediately insight in what can they do to course correct and make sure that the things are prevented rather than cured. So that's over to you to how you explain the metrics that matter to Accenture specifically, but as I said, these might differ depending on what types of business problems are you trying to solve. And it's of course all configurable. You can see them in your dashboard if you want to see them, but we can predict them all, so it's just a matter of configuration.
Yeah. And maybe I'll start with hands raising now. Who is here an HR professional? I think many of us are, right? We're in an HR domain somehow, yeah. Okay, how often have you been selling internally an HR project that is more soft focused to your business leadership, and how often have you failed, or was it really a challenge to you? I think, yeah, quite often, right? Yeah, because what's the business value? That's the question you get. And with these insights, actually, that Welliba is giving, it's a lot easier. I showed this overview to our country managing director, and he said, wow, we can really work with this flight risk, because that means that people are leaving us very fast. That's quite interesting, because we buy them for their knowledge, the company, not the people. We buy them for the knowledge, so we want to keep them, and this is quantifiable. And also all of this here, it's very scientifically based, so that also helps for the analytical people that I often need to persuade to implement something like Welliba. So that's one thing that's a good benefit to me, at least. And then there are three elements that I want to look at. Like I mentioned, acquisitions. We want to focus on flight risk, but also we want to make sure that they trust the colleagues they're working with as soon as possible, and also their new team members and team leads as well, and the company as a whole, and that they see that they can also progress in their career. Because we are a huge organization, so we do offer a lot of possibilities, and that's one of our selling propositions, so this is something we also want to see. Now, when we looked at the results, first of all, let me start with how many users that we have. So when we started, as I mentioned, the first VNA survey, we had about 3% of response rate, which was really, really low. You cannot really do anything with these results. Then we started in end of April. It was end of April, so April, May. It went up quite a lot, our response rates. And then we also, over summer, we dropped a bit the attention that we gave ourselves from a central perspective to get people onto the tool. Because they also just joined Accenture. And we said, okay, December, January, we need to increase that again if we want to use Welliba more often. And also new things have been released in Welliba since then, because it's an ever-changing tool and an evolving tool as well. So the managers have more insights now. And that's something we use December, January to also increase and boost their team managers to make people fill in Welliba or have it on their phone and have a reminder to it. What did we notice? Career actually was one of the elements that was scoring a bit less than before. So we decreased 2% here, which is not what we want, but it was expected. Because when did we have our talent outcomes? So in our annual process was around November, December. So when you look at these results, we did expect a decrease, because it was announced that within Accenture we didn't have many promotions this year, nor a lot of extra remuneration or bonuses. So people were a bit upset. So we did expect this decrease, but it's good to see this, that also acquisitions are already experiencing this, because it also means that they are feeling the Accenture culture already. So somehow positive and a negative. Then our flight risk of these people decreased with 5%, which is a lot. So that means that we have 5% less people wanting to leave us. Not saying that they would, but at least the will to leave is less. And they trust us 13% more, which is a huge increase. Of course, it takes time to trust as well. It's not something that happens on the spot. But on top of that, they also indicate that they really trust us. And that's when you listen to the previous presentations, almost all of them, trust was a key element in almost every presentation. So here it shows we increased a lot. So it's quantifiable again, the important element of trust. Then when we look at the context insights that we had for this team, we had 3 boosters and 3 blockers. It's something that you can always see in your report. And this was across the whole team, the whole acquisition. We had 93% finding colleagues a booster. So they love working with those colleagues, as well for flexible work arrangements. So they love these, and the peer-to-peer communication. And you might think, wow, this is very high. I don't want to, the risk is of decreasing, similar to what you were saying before in the DHL presentation. So we want to keep this as well. So what did we do? We used those boosters, amplified them, and put them into practice for our blockers. So, for instance, the colleagues was a very important one. We created a buddy system because they like working with these colleagues and connecting with these colleagues. So we also mentioned it. We know you like it. So we're going to pair you up with someone from Accenture, who also knows the processes and policies, who is also very often still frustrated about them, who also don't know them, even after multiple trainings. You can share frustrations, and what did we notice? It went up. Just by sharing the same frustration, that's enough. And having a connection in another team with someone you didn't know yet. Same for business strategy is something we worked on as well. So we rearranged the structure they were in because it was very different from the way they were working before. And with the billability, chargeability, and consulting, it was very different to them. So we changed them into a different team. And via that change, it now also gave a huge increase in that business strategy because they feel that it's more aligned with their core type of work. So based on these outcomes, we did changes. And that definitely had an increase in the trust as well, and also in the decrease of flight risk. Increased trust, decreased flight risk. So when you see here, this is a comparison being made. So you can see that the colleagues over time kept quite stable, a bit up with 2%. Same for flexible work arrangement, quite stable, a bit down with 3%. Peer-to-peer comms as well, a bit stable. A bit down, a bit stable. So it's quite okay to see this, that our boosters at least stayed the same, and that they didn't decrease a lot. Because those are important elements to also amplify, and do not forget and only focus about the negatives, because then you might drop in these as well. Then what did we see? And that's an interesting part, these blockers. When you look at the remeasurement again, the clarity on processes and policies, it decreased a lot as a blocker. So now we are actually, 11% less of a blocker. So this is good. That's why the arrow is green. So this is a good change here. Same for top-down communication. This is also less of a blocker. Small difference, so not a huge one. I don't think we could still work on this one a lot. And then the same for business strategy, which is 12% difference. Sorry. Yeah. 12% difference, also to the benefit of the business strategy, which relates to the part that I was just mentioning. We changed actually the way of working and their team structure based on their feedback. Of course, we don't know all these insights with just these questions. So what is very interesting as well, the team manager of this team, the HR manager, could also ask extra polling questions and extra clarification questions like business strategy. Okay, what do you mean with that? And we got extra insights because of that, and you can create those yourself as well. So that's also interesting to dig a bit deeper, and therefore you don't always need those focus groups. You can do them still in addition, but you have already a lot of information by doing this. Okay, there are key learnings. I think something very interesting from my side at least, because I started together with Veliba. In the beginning, you need to dedicate some time to launch and set up properly. And then I also think about your communication plan involving business stakeholders, people from the teams itself, because it's a lot more impactful if it comes from someone they know. If someone they know asks them to fill it in, to download the app, to share the importance of it. And also having someone internally collaborating on communication, for instance, because you can also implement it as a communication tool and push some notifications on a next event that happens. So That's really important, and in the beginning you need to have someone that focuses on it for a little while at least. Now I have let go, honestly, a lot, and it works because the HR managers, the HR partners of every team are actually working with it now. So. Then the continuous activation, as you saw in our graph, when we dropped a bit the activation ourselves, or when we were less behind, then it also dropped in participation rate. So it's something to keep in your minds. That very often you need to do an extra boost again of, hey, remind yourself, we have Valiba, it's a good tool to use. And I think after a while, but I don't think it will happen in 6 months, but after a while they get so used to it that they will use it as a tool very often, and also can share it in team meetings, their results and the actions they've taken. And also the giving back to people that have filled it in. So if you have taken an action, like on the business strategy and the restructuring, mentioning like, look, we saw this in Valiba. The feedback you gave us there gave us input to make this business change. And making that connection to where they gave input and the actions we did was very insightful for them. And that's also what they said in our team meetings then afterwards. That was very insightful. And the third point that I didn't do, scan the internal learning resources, because it's so good if you get an immediate link to, for instance, a leadership session that is organized soon as well. And you've indicated in your Valiba index somewhere that that's of interest to you, then you get an immediate link to that learning resource. But also there you need someone to give dedicated time in the beginning to link as many resources available, because then you have a good going in position. But besides that, Valiba also offers a lot. So if you don't have your learning resources linked, it's still a very valid tool to use.
Yeah, so for what Anne said, a lot of you, I'm sure, use different technologies for different types of questions, and the idea is to consolidate where we can. So because it predicts psychosocial risk, it predicts well-being outcomes, it predicts engagement, but it also looks at the now, and at the root causes. We are seeing a consolidation opportunity, and there were even some managers using Microsoft Team Forms because they were having a Gallup before, and they wanted to do pulsing, and all these different tools and Excels. So they now see we make them more self-sufficient. They can even use a news functionality themselves. They could even use a polling functionality. It's just a question of permissions. What do we want them to do? What do we want them to do themselves? How far can we go? You know, what in the dashboard should they be seeing? They should only see their teams. It's also aggregated, which means it's privacy by design. Important. Why? Because people need to trust that they're not going to be, oh, this person said so. So nobody centrally can dive in and drill into the detail. It's really, we are acting as a data controller on that front, which also reinforces some of the valuableness of the outcomes. Because of course, if people trust, they're more honest, and if they're more honest, they get better insights for themselves. They get better guidance on how to improve their situation. So it's a good vicious cycle on quality improvement of data. And then, as Anne said, involvement of stakeholders. So there's a comms person, there's different people who could use the technology. So as Anne said, just even an event, we have a new win. It could be just a news item with a link here, register here. It doesn't need to have to be all around employee experience, but it can allow you to, again, target to specific groups. So I see something in the dashboard I don't really understand. Policies and clarity on policies and procedures was a key blocker. And there was a long list. And so there was a poll question, which one of those policies and procedures do you want us to focus on in this upcoming workshop? And they could vote. And as soon as there are more than 5 votes, people see even the vote of the colleagues. And then they knew which of the 12 of the policies should have been presented. And that's the enablement we do. Of course, they see immediately signal, action, and insights for themselves. And I think just autonomy, right? We know that's intrinsically people like to be a bit more autonomous. We typically control a lot centrally, and all of these polling and central listening are one way typically. It's a one-way street. So we want to create more ownership, because if we have more ownership at individual level, but also at people leader level, then of course everyone is more autonomous in driving successful outcomes for the business and for the individuals as a team. So yeah, with that we concluded. We are a few more minutes if there are any questions from the group or the team. Unfortunately, Anne and I cannot join, as I said earlier, because of the Deutsche Bahn strikes. We cannot do the table discussions, but Hendrik, my colleague, sitting there, is going to be here until tomorrow afternoon. But again, if there's any questions that are left unanswered, we would love to hear from you afterwards. One click away. Sorry, and then yeah, if there's anyone interested in the white papers, some of the science behind, just use the QR code and you will have all the more detailed research papers if you're interested. So I'll just leave this up if anyone wants to. Good. Yep.
Okay. So I just have one question. You started with mentioning the survey fatigue, and now you are in Belgium, as I understood. So are these global surveys still running on top, or were you strong enough to eliminate them?
Not yet.
Not yet. So,
Starting.
okay.
Starting small, we want to grow.
That was one of the points of you mentioned. So there are good chances that's going to go global because success. I mean, it's really impressive. So thank you so much for this presentation.